Okay, so let us now talk about some of the generic research challenges. So these are challenges which we have to take into account as a whole when we are talking about different IoT solutions. First thing is the computing communication technologies and technologies for identification. Here, whether you are talking about computation, whether you are talking about communication, or even for sensing, you have to take the energy into issue, the energy into account. Energy is always an issue in IoT because we are talking about low power devices, low resource devices. So energy constraint is very high in IoT. So at the device level, you need to have devices which will consume very less energy. At the protocol level, you need to have protocols designed which will consume very low power, and also in the application level, all the applications that we design for IoT, for working in IoT, we have to ensure that these applications also take very less amount of consume very less energy. Now that is very important. Plus another thing that I also told you is IoT basically caters to solving different solutions, different real-life problems where real-time solutions are very important. So you need to do some processing. So where you are going to do the processing, how, whether if you are talking about regular kind of communication, sending the data to the cloud, that basically increases the latency in terms of processing, in terms of getting the decisions and so on. So how you are going to do that, right? So that is why I was telling you that with cloud, without cloud, locally, at the edge, fog-based, so all these different things come into the picture. Second aspect is basically that it's a distributed system. Most of the IoT systems are distributed because all these different nodes, they are basically distributed across in different geographic locations and so on. So ultimately it's a geographically distributed system. So all your issues of routing, flow control, synchronization between the different objects, misbehavior between the different objects, address allocation, and there are so many different things which come associated with the distributed architecture. So all of these you have to come up with different solutions which will cater to this distributed requirement. So not only that, but also, as I said, that it has to be low power. Whatever solution you propose, it has to be low power, low resource consuming solution for a distributed environment. Intelligence is also very important. Because it's a distributed system, the processing has to be done, in a distributed manner. So finally, what is going to happen is the inferences, whether the inferences will be drawn based on some local intelligence, or you are going to get the data together and then run your intelligence over there and infer what is going on. So I think much of it is also dependent on the specific problem that is being addressed with the help of IoT. So these are some of these different issues. Security, as I said before, is very important. Security in terms of confidentiality, security in terms of privacy, trust, etc. So all of these security issues plus privacy, trust, etc. All of these will have to be handled. So in terms of confidentiality, access control is very important. Who gets access to which data? Not that every data will be made available in raw form to all the different stakeholders. So depending on if it is an organizational deployment, depending on the organizational hierarchy, the access control has to be defined and it has to be implemented. Query processing is important. Whenever you are running queries, getting responses, secure query processing is very important because ultimately when you are talking about data, so running queries is an integral part of any data intensive system. Identity management, we have to have unique identities for the different objects, smart objects, and the management of this identity that is important. Running different encryption mechanisms, which encryption mechanisms you are going to use, whether you are going to use different solutions like PKI, etc. Then again, which so you are going to use let us say the cryptographic algorithms like this thing RSA and all these things. these are not going to be very suitable because you are talking about a distributed environment which is highly resource constant. So how you are going to deal with it? So many different issues come into picture. In terms of privacy, privacy also is very important. You have to anonymize the data that is going out of the system. That means that if we, the example that I gave you earlier, if we are talking about let us say a home network, the data going out of the home. If we are talking about organizational IoT deployment, the data that is going out of the organization. So how you are going to anonymize the data, because nobody should be identified based on the data that is going to go out. So anonymization of the data, not only anonymization, securing the data and offering the different privacy mechanisms so that not that anybody can get access to it. These are all very important issues in IoT, success of IoT deployments. Trust is very important. You have to, the data that is coming in, that has to be trustworthy, otherwise nobody will accept the data. So how you are going to create a simple kind of trust negotiation language for supporting the semantic interoperability requirements of IoT? What is this trust negotiation mechanism that is going to be there, and how this object identity management is going to be performed, and so on. So like this, there are so many different trust issues that come into picture. Are you going to use your regular Diffie-Hellman based solutions for enforcing trust, or is that sufficient, or is it something that is going to be heavyweight? So is there a lightweight alternative to Diffie-Hellman? So like that, so many different issues come into picture when you are talking about trust. In terms of applications, IoT applications are very pervasive. There are so many, and the adoption of these IoT applications are also increasing quite rapidly. Whether it is the consumer domain or whether it is the regular business domain, IoT applications are increasing day by day. So you have consumer and home appliances which are IoT based. People are talking about smart watches, smart television, smart refrigerators, smart air conditioning system. You know which ones are the smartest air conditioning systems that are available commercially. These are basically the ones where you can send a message maybe from West Bengal and your air conditioner is going to start in Mizoram, right? So you have all the air conditioners that are commercially available already. These are the smartest ones that are available. So energy consumption is going to be minimized. The inverter air conditioners, for example. Then how you are going to manage the air conditioner and use it if, let us say, the room temperature or the lighting control or whatever, if people are already aware, identifying that and then turning off, let us say, the air conditioner. So like that, there are so many different uses that are there for these air conditioners and making them smarter. Similarly, smart infrastructure like smart homes, smart transportation, smart public places and so on, smart infrastructure is important. Security and surveillance of the public infrastructure like railway stations, like hospitals, like whatever are the public infrastructure, securing those public infrastructure is important. So IoT, that is also a very important domain of IoT. Transportation, industrial Internet of Things. In the industries also, IoT based solutions are getting adopted at a quite rapid pace. Then you have the healthcare, hospitals, monitoring of patients, and different other use cases. So all of these are different attractive applications of IoT. Smart library management. So this is an example of smart library management. As you can see in this particular figure, so you have the self-checking checkout services, anti-theft detection, book dropping services, self-management. All of these are going to be all automated. So without any human being doing the stuff themselves, managing the system themselves. So it's a smart library management system. And this particular example shows that you have all these which are RFID tag. So there are RFID tags that are going to be there, and then you can even add different sensors or whatever to the shelves and make things smarter. So this is their smart stock management. Likewise, this is like in a regular shopping shopping mall or whatever. So there will be microchip that will be added to the different devices, and these devices are going to come through the chip. These are going to send different data, and then they are going to procure, get access to the data and perform certain analysis and so on. and for shelving of the different items, and for transportation, logistics, etc. All these different data will be useful for monitoring the stocks in a smarter manner. So Autobot is an example of a system that is useful for offering diagnostic services for cars. This system will inform the relatives in case of an accident, and also will identify where a particular car is at a certain point of time. So like that, there are so many different other solutions in the market. So smart home solutions, where you are going to have, in a home you have all these, right? So you have different electrical appliances, you have different media like television sets, sound system and so on, air control, then music systems, heating system, and security systems, and so on. So all of these, all of these can be made smarter with the adoption of IoT technologies to get smart homes. Similarly, you can have smart shopping system. So basically, when you are entering through the door, the scanners will identify you based on the tags that are there in your clothing. Thereafter, basically, when you are shopping in the market, the goods will introduce themselves. You will tell when you pass by, what is available in the shelves, and the other maybe some metadata or something like that will be announced as you pass along like that. Then when you are moving the goods, the reader will tell the staff to put a new one. So like that, and when you are paying for the goods, the microchip of the credit card will communicate with the checkout reader. So like that, this is a smart shopping kind of system. Smart city is very important. So this is a smart city where you have, in a typical smart city you have road transportation, surveillance systems, lighting systems, then you have the sparking, smart grid, water management, then you have the waste management, so many different things. All of this would be made smarter with the help of the IoT solutions. This is a typical scenario of a smart city. As you can see over here, you have so many different services. You have emergency and disaster management services. You have intelligence collaboration services, critical infrastructure management services, citizen services and e-government, public administration services, law enforcement services, and the information management services. Because ultimately you deal with all the information, so how you are going to manage all of these information together so that you can offer better services, improved services to the citizens of the city. Future transportation, likewise, this is an example of future transportation use. As you can see, electric vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles, PHEVs, are quite popular in a smart transportation kind of environment in a smart city. Then hybrid vehicles, and how you are going to charge these vehicles. So if you put them under some kind of a solar panel, the chargers will basically charge your vehicle, and so on. So nowadays people are also talking about wireless charging of vehicles. I do not know how many of you have heard about wireless charging of vehicles. Have you heard of wireless charging? Yeah. So I am sure that you definitely have seen the wireless charging of mobile phones, right? That is quite common. So likewise, wireless charging of vehicles is also becoming very popular. So what you have to do is that you go and park your vehicle in some designated platform, and automatically after few hours the vehicle will get fully charged, right? So through some induction mechanism, right? So that is called wireless charging. Smart agriculture, I already gave you some examples for irrigation, for plucking of the produce, agricultural produce, for harvesting of the produce, plucking of the produce, for what is it called, for post-harvest operations. So all of these for farm machinery, used in farm machinery like tractors, etc. IoT devices are used so that remotely the agricultural operations can be monitored, and you can collect data for improved farming. Smart agriculture and smart farming are very popular. So with this, I come to the end of giving you an introduction of the different generic research challenges that are there, and also the different applications that are possible with the help of IoT. Smart agriculture, smart healthcare, smart library, smart transportation, smart cities in general. So these are some of the different things to mention in terms of IoT applications. These are some of the books that are there that have been published by me, and there are actually a few more, and there is another book, there are two books that are coming up sometime early 2020. These books will be released. One is Introduction to Internet of Things by Cambridge University Press, and the other one is Introduction to Industrial Internet of Things by CRC Press. So these two books will be out in the market sometime early in 2020. A lot of media releases based on our work. So this is the first part. Then I'm going to talk about any questions you have. So, do you have any question? If not, let us quickly move on to the next thing that I would like to discuss in somewhat detail. This is basically the wireless sensor networks. Ultimately, when you are talking about IoT, connected smart objects, ultimately what happens is you have sensor embedded devices. So essentially what you are forming is a wireless sensor network. So if it is a wireless sensor network, you can basically, let me first tell you about something, that wireless networks in general, they can be classified into two types. That definitely I think you must be knowing. One is the infrastructure based networks like cellular networks, Wi-Fi and so on, because over there you have the concept of the base stations, over there you have the concept of the access points and so on. However, what happens is infrastructure-based networks, you have to have certain planning ahead of time, and you have to plan for the network before actually you can deploy the network. So you have infrastructure-based networks. You have also another one, infrastructure-less networks, which are very popular because there is no requirement of centralized access points and base stations. So ad hoc networks in general falls in this particular category. These are infrastructure-based networks. Sensor networks that we talk about typically, you can think of them kind of in between the regular infrastructure-based and the infrastructure-less. It is infrastructure-less network with the requirement that you have to send the data to some sink or the base station for further processing. So that way, it is infrastructure-based also. Infrastructure, so it's a combination of infrastructure-based and infrastructure-less network. So talking about the ad hoc networks have been very popular because of the fact that they can be used, they can be deployed very quickly in times of emergency, particularly maybe during after some disaster has struck, for post-disaster rescue efforts, right? For having communication between the different rescuers. So ad hoc networks is very common over there. Ad hoc networks is also used, like let us say if it is a conference or if it is some workshop like this, you can form an ad hoc network between different computing devices. You can configure in the ad hoc mode, and you can have communication between yourselves, even if the external connectivity is not there with the backbone network. So ad hoc networks have become very popular, and wireless sensor networks, basically, as I said, is a kind of ad hoc network. So the kind of wireless sensor network that falls in this category, these are also specifically known as the wireless ad hoc sensor networks, or some people call it as wireless sensor ad hoc networks. So either way, this is the same thing. So in IoT, typically we strive to build this ad hoc wireless sensor network. This is what we try to build. Although at present what is happening is due to the fact that things are not yet very mature. So still people are working with the existing infrastructure, just plugging in devices, so that doesn't make it fully ad hoc in nature. However, this is what ideally should be done. So what is this wireless sensor network? Ultimately what happens is there are different wireless sensor nodes that are deployed in different places. These sensor nodes, they have very small transmission range, and due to the fact that they have very small transmission ranges, you have to place different nodes in close proximity of each other, so that the data that is sensed by a particular node, it can be sent over a multi-hop path if the destination node is not within the direct transmission range of the source node. So it's a multi-hop kind of communication mechanism, where basically the intermediate nodes, they collaborate with each other so that the data can be transmitted between the source and the intended destination. So typically what happens is the data that you are sending, it's an analog, it's in the analog form by these sensor nodes or the IoT nodes. So this analog data will be sent as analog, or they will be converted to digital. So typically they are converted to digital form and then they are sent. So they are sent in the form of digital signals for further processing, and these intermediate nodes, they are going to act as relays, right? So they are going to act as relay nodes to transmit the data towards the multi-hub path. So these sensor networks are of two types, stationary as well as mobile. So if if all the nodes in the network are stationary, then you call it a stationary sensor network. Whereas if some of the nodes are mobile, then some or all of the nodes are mobile, then you call it a mobile sensor network. So typically a sensor node has a processing unit. It has like a microcontroller. So it has a processing unit. It has some kind of a energy supplying unit, some power unit, some transceiver unit for communication, and it also has some application dependent units like a mobility unit or geolocation finding unit and so on. These sensor nodes, they come in different shapes and sizes. So as you can see over here, these are the different shapes of these sensor nodes. They come in all different shapes, but the size also you can understand with respect to the different references like a fingertip. So these are like comparable to the size of the fingertip. So they come in very small, different types of shapes and sizes. They can be like the ones that are shown over here are very small sized sensor nodes, but they can be of different sizes, right? So they can be mega sized. These are like micro. Typically you will be using the namespace technology in order to build these sensors, but regular sensor nodes you will find are also there, which are bigger than this size, and those are the mega sized sensor nodes. And it can be like nowadays people are fabricating nano sensor nodes, as I was telling you in the morning. So these nano sensor nodes are based on use of nanomaterials nanomaterials to build the nano sensors. These are names based. So macro, MEMS and names. These are the different types of sensor nodes, sensors that are available to be used for building the sensor nodes. These sensor nodes, they are multifunctional typically. They can be used for conducting different things, but they have to be provisioned for, they have to be the material that is there for sensing. The material is sensitive to only specific stimuli. So what it means is that you need to have specific materials for sensing specific phenomena, right? So that is one thing, and second thing is that as I said that they have very short transmission ranges, so multi-hop communication is important, and also they are like small mini computers. So in the same way as computers have operating system for their operation, these sensor nodes also have their own operating system, and these are battery powered. So lifetime of the different nodes is very important in the sensor network community. So you have to basically come up with solutions which will be low resource consuming and which in turn is going to increase the lifetime of the network. So what is this lifetime? Lifetime is a technical term in sensor network community. So lifetime means like the time. So there are different definitions of lifetime. But the specific definition that we use in our research is basically, so there are different definitions. So let me tell you the basic definition first. So one definition says that lifetime is the time until which the first node in the network dies, and then the other extreme, there is another definition which says that all the nodes in the network die, right? Time until which all the nodes in the network die, and There is the intermediate definition which says that until X% of the nodes die. Until X% of the nodes die. And this is this intermediate definition that we use a lot in our research work, and X becomes a configuration parameter, right? So you have to configure. So when you are doing your simulations or when you are building something, so when until X% of the nodes die, X is a configuration parameter. So what are the different constraints on the sensor nodes? Sensor nodes are already, as I said, they are small in size, they come in all different shapes, and they are very small in size, they are very typically less than a cubic centimeters in size. They must consume extremely low power, and they should be able to operate in an unattended manner without any human intervention. So typically, all the safe properties of autonomic communication that you are aware of, you must be aware of autonomic computing, autonomic communication, and so on. So basically, that was autonomic computing was originally a term that was proposed about 15-20 years back by IBM, who basically in autonomic computing, what you are talking about is having systems who can do number of these stuffs like regular operations by themselves. Let us say the autonomic computing systems will be self-manageable, self-discoverable, self-healable, and so on. So they will have all these self properties. These sensor systems are also supposed to be working in an unattended manner in a highly dense area, in an autonomic, following some autonomic communication mechanisms. They should be having low communication cost, and they should be dispensable. If the cost is very low, then only it is possible that you can just deploy the nodes in some place and then forget about the nodes. But if it is costly, then you cannot do that. So actually what happens is, this is the vision, that vision of the sensor community is to degrade, is to decrease the cost of the different nodes, because you can place and forget those nodes once it is deployed. But in practice still, most of the sensor nodes are very costly, right? So you cannot really still go for placing and forgetting these nodes after deployment. They should be autonomous and be adaptive to the environment. So this is also the other requirements of the sensor nodes. These, as I told you, are some of these applications: temperature measurement, humidity level measurement, lighting condition, air pressure, soil noise level measurements, and vibration. So these are the different applications of the different sensors. So basically, depending on the type of measurement that has to be made, basically you also have to use the corresponding sensing materials that can help you to measure the corresponding physical quantity. It is not like one size fitting all kind of scenarios. You need to have specific sensors designed for measuring specific things. Here is an application of use of sensor network in post-disaster healthcare. After a particular disaster, whether it is natural disaster or a man-made disaster, after a disaster it is quite common that there will be different victims. There will be victims who maybe are already dead. There will be victims who maybe are alive and fighting for life. They all have to be brought to the hospitals, neighboring hospitals, in the quickest possible manner. So, this particular picture we have taken from one of my papers that was published in the IEEE Journal of Selected Areas in Communication, IEEE Journal of Selected Areas in Communication, IEEE. So here basically it is showing, like, through a multi-hub kind of path, the data are sent from the hospital beds, from patients in the hospital beds or patients in the ambulances, through a multi-hub kind of scenario. These are brought to the control room for further processing. Now let us talk about some different scenarios that one would encounter in the sensor network. Remember one thing, as I said, that IoT networks are nothing but sensor networks, right? Plus there is something else. So that something else we have already talked about in the forenoon and in the first part. And but the basic backbone still becomes a network of different devices, and these are sensor-enabled devices. So consequently, these are sensor networks. So let us try to understand the complexity that is involved in building these sensor networks or the IoT networks. Let us look at this particular diagram showing different nodes. Nodes 1 through, I think, 20. Nodes 1 through 20. So what we see that in this particular scenario, these different nodes, they try to sense whether there is a human object that is nearby them, right? So in this particular example, a query is sent from node 4 by the user it passes, the query passes through these different nodes shown in the form of different arrows, and finally this node 17, it responds back through this particular path back to the user, saying that it has sensed some human object. So this is a case of single source detecting single object. So this is a single object and a single source node detecting it. So this is one. Then let us say that instead of single object, now let us say that this particular node sees two other objects, a horse as well as a car, right? So what are the complexities that are involved? So now what has happened is two more objects have been added, but to the same source node. So what happens? So now there are a lot of complexities that come into the picture. Now the question is whether this node 17, whether it has sensed three different objects, or whether it is the same object that is moving around in its vicinity. How does it know? It doesn't know, right? And similarly, it also doesn't know whether it is the human object or whether it is the car object or which one is the horse object. So three different objects, or whether it is all the same object. So many different problems are there. Now let us say that we increase it further, and we increase, so let us say that we have a vehicle and it has been detected by 5 different nodes in this particular manner. So in this particular example, what we can see is that 5 different objects, multiple sources detecting a single object, So each of them, they will report back to this particular source node saying that whether it is, this is sync node saying that they all have sensed a particular car object. Now the sync node, how does it know whether these are 5 different objects or whether it is the same object that has been detected by the 5 different nodes, right? So it is hard to know. So you see, by changing the scenarios only slightly, we are getting into a lot of complexity. And in a real wireless sensor network problem, it is going to be much more complex, because you are going to get many more objects in reality, plus these more objects are also going to have their mobility and so on. So how you are going to deal with all these different scenarios? This is another example of where multiple sources detect multiple objects. So you have these different source nodes, all these different source nodes, it is no longer one object but 3 different objects. So how do you deal with that? Which node detects which particular object, which data will be sent by which particular path? They all are going to be sent to the same path, or there will be different alternatives that are going to be there, and which one has to be chosen based on the scenario. So like that, these are so many different complexities that are there. This is also another example of multiple sources detecting multiple objects in this particular manner, but the scenario over here is different, right? So both of these scenarios basically talk about multiple sources detecting multiple objects, but the level of complexity and the specific problem to be addressed is different. So here are some common challenges that one has to work on. So the first is basically the scalability. Scalability means providing acceptable levels of service even when the number of nodes is getting increased. Now the problem over here is that it has been shown theoretically that as the number of nodes in a network increases, the throughput of the network basically decreases at the rate of 1 over square root of n. So what it means is, if you are increasing the number of nodes from 2 to 4, basically the throughput is going to decrease from 1 over 2, that means 1 over square root of 2 to half, right? So fast it is going to decrease. So how you are going to deal with it? Because scalability is a very important requirement in sensor networks, and at the same time, if you are increasing the number of nodes, the quality of service, the throughput, it is also going to decrease. So how you are going to deal with this particular problem? Next thing is quality of service. Quality of service in terms of the network parameters like bandwidth, throughput, jitter, and so on. So how you are going to ensure, how you are going to guarantee these particular things in an environment full of unpredictable changes in the RF channel characteristics, and in an environment having very limited bandwidth. So how you are going to ensure, how you are going to guarantee quality of service? Then energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is very important. Nodes have very limited battery power. The nodes need to cooperate with other nodes for dealing their information. So first of all, you have to do your own stuff. You have to do your own regular work. On top of that, you also need to do the relaying work for the other nodes, because otherwise what is going to happen is that the other nodes, they cannot, if the intermediate nodes, they do not cooperate with the other nodes, these nodes, they are not going to be able to send their data. So how you are going to deal with the energy efficiency? Then comes security. We are talking about an open medium. So in an open in security in any network is an issue. Security in any wireless network is a bigger issue. And then if you are talking about a wireless network where there is no centralized access point, centralized controller and so on, so it becomes even more issue. So if it is a distributed system, it becomes a even more issue. So how we are going to deal with these problems? So these nodes are going to be prone to malicious attacks, infiltration, eavesdropping and interference. So let us now talk about those were the common challenges. Now in a practical situation, what happens? You need to send the sensed data, because sensor network gives you what? Sensor network gives you power in terms of data acquisition, right? So but then what do you deal with the data? How do you deal with it? So it has to be sent through the internet. So internet will have different storage devices. So how do you store the data? How do you make it accessible? So earlier I told you that nowadays people use cloud services a lot. But the problem is that each of these cloud services, the actual servers are physically located distance apart from the source nodes. So increased distance means increased latency. And if you are talking about deployment of the solutions for catering to some real-time requirements, then cloud-based solutions are also not very attractive. So sensor wave, sensor cloud, IoT cloud, these are different solutions that are there for mixing of the data acquisition, for which sensor networks are popular, and the data dissemination or sharing, which is good in terms of the web technologies and the cloud-based technologies. So for sensor web enablement, in the same way as you have for the regular internet, you have the web services. Here also you have the sensor web services. Sensor web services including sensor modeling language, transducer modeling language, sensor observation service, sensor planning service, alert service, web notification services, observations and management. Like this, there are so many different components of the sensor web enablement. So let us now talk about the issue of cooperation, because the issue of cooperation is fundamental to the sensor networks or IoT networks, because these networks, they rely on different intermediate nodes in the multi-hop path in order to be able to send the data from the source to the destination node. So the problem is that these intermediate nodes will have to cooperate. We already saw that these nodes are already energy constrained. So first of all, they have to do their own regular work, and on top of that, they have to also do the work for others in terms of relaying other people's packets or other people's messages. So basically, there is a tendency in these networks for non-cooperation, because it is like a social system where different nodes, they have to cooperate with each other, and they also have limited resources. So if they have limited resources and they have to cooperate, they will be reluctant to cooperate because they don't want to spend the limited resources that they have. So there is a tendency for non-cooperation. So you can have in these networks two extremities. One is the total cooperation, the other one is the total non-cooperation. So total cooperation is the scenario where all relay requests are accepted and the nodes will consequently die out of the energy very soon. And in this kind of approach, it is very easy to launch some denial of service attack because if you flood a particular network with properly behaving nodes, the nodes are going to and if there is a denial of service attack, then what will happen? These nodes are all going to forward their packets that they receive, and consequently they are going to die out of the limited energy pretty soon, pretty fast. So total cooperation is not good. Total non-cooperation consequently is also not good, because if no relay requests are accepted, then the network throughput will go down drastically. So there are issues of selfishness, self-interest, symbiotic dependence, and trade-off between the lifetime and the throughput of the network. There are, as I said, security is important. Cooperation is important. Security is even more problem when you are talking about nodes required to be cooperating. So if it is a fully cooperating node, as I said, that the simplest way to launch any security attack is basically to have a denial of service attack. So you simply keep on forwarding packets, keep on sending packets to the network. Every node is well behaved and they are going to send the packet and the network is going to go down pretty fast because of the drainage of the energy due to this kind of attack. Another type of denial of service attack is basically jamming style attack. In a jamming style attack, what you need to do is, these are highly constrained networks as I said already. So all you need to do is simply send some strong signals, much stronger compared to the signal strength of the network between the different nodes in the network. So send stronger signals and automatically the nodes are going to be blocked. They will not be able to talk to each other because they have very low signal strength between themselves. So they are going to be blocked, they are going to be jammed. So this is how the cooperating nodes, this is how the nodes, the regular nodes, they will be affected in terms of security in this kind of network. So types of node behavior. So depending on the type of node behavior, these nodes, IoT nodes, sensor nodes, they can be classified into two types: unintentional misbehavior and intentional misbehavior. So in the intentional category, we have the selfish nodes and the malicious nodes. In the unintentional category, we have the failed nodes and the badly failed nodes. Selfish nodes, the failed nodes are the ones that are unable to perform an operation, and this could be because of power failure and environmental effects. Badly failed nodes exhibit features of failed nodes, but they can also send some false routing messages which are a threat to the integrity of the network. So basically, badly failed nodes are not only the nodes that are already failed, but in addition, they also send some garbage data to the network, thereby by affecting the integrity of the overall network. Selfish nodes are the ones that are unwilling to cooperate as the protocol requires whenever there is a personal cost that are involved, and packet blocking is the main attack by selfish nodes. If there is a node which is acting selfish, so what it will do is first it will pretend to be cooperating, and then you send the packet to that particular node. Silently it is going to drop the packet instead of sending it forward. Malicious nodes, basically deliberately they disrupt the correct operation of the routing protocol, denying network service if possible. So in terms of sensor networks, there has been a lot of work that has been done previously, and also at present there is a lot of interest in sensor networks because of the popularity of IoT. So as I said that any IoT network is also a sensor network. In fact, it's a sensor actuator network, and so we need to understand what are the main issues and how you are going to set up that kind of network. So let us, so we identify different fundamental problems. So in our group, a few of the students, they came up with the concept of dumb node. So dumb nodes are quite common. So this is the first type of misbehaving nodes that we have identified in addition to selfish nodes, faulty nodes and malicious nodes. We identified that there is another kind of misbehavior called the dumb behavior. The dumb behavior happens when the nodes are subject to certain environmental conditions so that they can basically sense what is going on around them, but are not able to forward it further towards the destination node. Right? So basically they can sense, they can hear, but they are not able to speak. Right? So these are the dumb nodes, and this is the first time we basically identified the existence of these dumb nodes in an environment. So detection of dumb nodes is very important. First of all, how do you know in the network which nodes are getting affected, which nodes are acting dumb? So the detection of dumb nodes is not very easy. So there are so we came up with a solution by which the dumb nodes can be identified in an automatic manner once the network has been deployed. So that is one thing. Topology management is very important because these nodes, they have a particular duty cycle, which means that these nodes, they remain active for certain duration of time in their lifetime, and then they also go to the sleep state. Like that, active sleep, they continue throughout the network. So for certain duration of time they remain active, then they go to the sleep state and the process continues. So the problem is, so how do you ensure that these nodes, they are going to be made active whenever there is the event that it has to sense, and other times you have to send it to the sleep mode, the sleep state. The reason is why you want to put it to the sleep state and you want to maximize that sleep duration is because in the sleep state the power consumption is the least, and in the active state the power consumption is more. So you want to minimize the active duration, and you want to maximize the sleep duration. So timely detection of an event of interest, monitoring the event, dissemination of the event data to the sink, adapting with the changes of the event state. These are all different issues that will have to be taken into account when you are talking about topology management, and particularly event aware. So whenever there is an event, how do you deal with that event, and how do you change the topology? How do you make the different nodes active and keep the other nodes in the sleep state depending on the detection of the event and the localization of the event. Now, so in a typical sensor network, what happens is the nodes, an intermediate node can receive the same information from multiple different other nodes in the network. So essentially what happens is, by doing that, you are basically unnecessarily you are exerting more on the network in terms of passing more packets around in the network. So we came up with an information theoretic sensor network solution by which the nodes they are going to sense whether there is any incremental or significant change in the sense parameter, and once that parameter is crossed, once that threshold is crossed, only that packet is going to be sent. The other packets are not going to be sent. Right? So only the packets which have significantly more information content than the previous packets, those packets are going to be transmitted forward, and the other packets are not going to be. So this is the INSEM protocol that we came up with, which deals with this particular issue. So sensor networks are very popular. We came up with different solutions. Nowadays social networks have become popular. So Twitter, connecting sensor networks to Twitter, connecting sensor networks to your other social networking platforms, that has also become very popular. But the problem is that how do you deal with the energy management issue? So are you going to send and transmit and publish whatever data you are getting from the sensor network, or you are going to do some kind of screening of the data that is passed? So we came up with the social sensing based duty cycle management for monitoring real events. What is this real event? Real event means these kind of networks like social network and sensor network integrated systems. They will be able to monitor if there is any suspicious activity that is going on, and if there is any suspicious activity, then that will be reported. Otherwise, it is going to continue just like that. This is very important because sometimes you will see that from the social media one can guess like if there is anything dangerous that is coming in the future. So certain analytics will be done in the social media platforms from the data that is published in social media platforms. Continuously the analysis will be done, and if there is some suspicious activity, then the duty cycle is going to be that means the active duration is going to be increased. Otherwise the duty cycle is going to be reduced. That means the sleep duration is going to be increased. Right. So based on the monitoring of these real events through the social media, basically the duty cycle of the sensor networks can be controlled, and consequently energy constraints can be taken care of. So I'll skip this and I will come to this jamming in sensor networks. Jamming, as I told you already, is a kind of denial of service attack. So it is very easy to launch jamming style attacks in any sensor network because these sensor networks are highly constrained, and they have very low signal strength and so on. So the signals have very low strength. So consequently, what happens is if you have a high power device, it can very easily affect the successful operations of that particular network, and this is known as the jamming jamming style attack. Now these jamming style attacks can be of different types. One is the proactive jamming. In proactive jamming, basically the channel is unintelligently blocked. And then you have the reactive jamming, where upon sensing a channel busy, it sends the jammer basically sends short duration signals. So you have reactive jamming, you have the proactive jamming. Two types of jamming are very common. So I will skip this one also. So we came up with solutions first of all to detect whether there is any jamming style attack that is going on in the network, and thereafter to localize which region is already jammed, and then the intensity of the jamming. So this tonalization is basically it segments the region that is being jammed into different parts based on the index or the severity of jamming that this particular region is experiencing. Then jammed area mapping, so which area is being jammed, and then how much is the intensity, and also jammer tracking. Basically, first of all you have to identify that where is this jammer, and then the jammer may be moving, the jammer may not be staying at one place. So once the jammer moves, again you have to follow the jammer as well, right? So tracking the jammer is also another very important problem. So first of all, identifying whether there is jamming taking place. Then second thing is to identify the region for which the jamming is taking place. Third is basically the intensity of jamming in the different places of the jammed region. Fourth is basically identifying the location from where the jamming style attack is being launched. And fifth is basically tracking the movement of the jammer as the jammer basically moves around, right? So these are some of the important problems that we have worked on in our work on jamming in sensor networks. The next thing is sensor cloud. Sensor cloud is also something there where we have done a lot of work. In sensor cloud, we are talking about offering sensor as a service in the same way as in cloud, regular cloud platform. So what is cloud, right? Cloud is something where it's a platform where you can make available different computing resources on demand using a paper kind of service model. So for that you use virtualization technologies, and multi-tenancy models are adopted and so on. So for deploying cloud services. So here also in sensor cloud, what we thought about is in the same way as regular cloud talks about computing as a service. Can we come up with something like a sensor as a service or sensing as a service? So what does it mean? Sensing as a service means like whenever I have certain sensing requirements, I will not go and procure and deploy and maintain the sensor networks commercially and make it available, but I will use some publicly available sensing services, sensor network services. And that basically has become very important because that opens a new area of business where there will be these entities like sensor cloud service providers and sensor owners. They all can earn money from the deployment of these sensing solutions. So whoever has requirements for any sensor data, they will be able to get access to that particular sensor data. So I am skipping all of these. So even like this one, here we are actually talking about target tracking using sensor cloud. So you have the sensor cloud platform, but then one of the important things is that you have to, for surveillance purposes in sensor network, you have to track the trajectory of the targets, the suspicious targets, right? So first of all, you have to know that some object is suspicious. Then as the object moves around following a particular trajectory, you also have to follow the trajectory of that particular target. So that is one. But then if you have multiple targets, then how do you handle that? So multi-target tracking and single target tracking in sensor cloud, we have proposed a solution for this thing. It has been published in IEEE communication letters. So if you are interested, the reference is also given somewhere. The reference is not given, but it is published in the IEEE communication letters. If you are interested, just do a search using my name and target tracking in sensor cloud. You will be able to get access to that particular paper. So what is the time now? Okay. So
4, then after that we will have interactive.
Sorry?
3 or up to 4.
Up to 4,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Then we will have interactive.
Yes.
440 passes there.
Right. So, I'll skip this one also, and I'll just talk about a few things that are very important. So, what we have seen so far are different sensor network based solutions. We have identified different sensor network problems and so on. Few things are very important. When you are talking about sensor networks, when you are talking about IoT, you need solutions that will cover the entire space. So, so far what I have shown you are basically terrestrial sensor networks. So, sensor networks which are deployed on the ground, right? So, like this, there are underwater sensor networks that are also important, so that you can monitor the conditions, monitor different activities that are taking place under the water, right? And similarly, you can have aerial sensor networks which will monitor different things that are taking place aerially, right? So you have terrestrial sensor networks, you have aerial sensor networks, and you have underwater sensor networks. The challenge in each of these domains is all different. So for instance, if you come up with a solution for terrestrial sensor networks, that is not going to be sufficient for use in underwater sensor networks. If you are coming up with a solution for underwater sensor networks, that cannot be used for aerial sensor networks. So the challenges are all different, and also you need specific solutions for them. For aerial sensor networks, typically the base platform that is used for deploying these sensors are the aerial devices like the modern drones and so on. So finally what you have are flying ad hoc networks which have these different sensors. So you have a flying sensor network consequently, and there is huge mobility between these different sensors and devices there, because these are aerial platforms, right? They move quite fast, and how you are going to deal with that? So the challenges are very different. So there also topology management is important. In regular terrestrial sensor networks also topology management is important, and for underwater sensor networks also topology management is important. But underwater sensor networks, they face different challenges. They face different challenges due to the dynamism of the underwater environments. Like if you are deploying some sensor network in the underwater, under the surface of the water, it gets affected by waves, tides, and lot of different underwater activities. So how you are going to deal with that? Underwater environments are also challenged because they are even more low bandwidth, low data rate environments. Low bandwidth, low data rate environments. Highly mobile, low data rate, low bandwidth. So because you are talking about underwater means what? Radio communication cannot work. So you are talking about what? Sound based communication, ultrasound. Right? So ultrasound means like it's an acoustic environment, and acoustic environment means automatically your bandwidth becomes very reduced, and bandwidth reduced means consequently the data rate also is reduced, right? So the data rate is also reduced. So how do you deal with that? So all of these different issues are there for the deployment of these different types of sensor networks. Another thing is, which is very important currently, particularly for the military, is something to integrate the aerial sensor network with the terrestrial with underwater with aerial. So all of these are very important because most of the modern warfare basically talks about integration of different defense services like Army, Air Force, and Navy, right? So each of them, they have their own different solutions, but then how do you integrate all of them together? So this is a huge challenge, and integration of the different sensor network platforms into one is a very important problem that people are working on globally at this point. So with this kind of background, I have given you enough knowledge about the different research works that are going on in sensor networks and consequently IoT. What are the generic challenges, what are some of the works that in our group we are carrying on, and in the beginning, in the first part of the lecture specifically on IoT, I also talked about the different systems that we have built, the IoT based systems. For example, the agricultural systems, the healthcare systems. We also have systems in the power domain for monitoring the different environmental conditions of these power sector equipments like the transformers, and different other devices. Also for monitoring whether there is any leakage of current through different phenomena, which is called the partial discharge of current, right? So that is also very important, particularly in high tensile lines that are passing from one point to another. So there is there is the loss of current or electricity into the regular air, right? So how do you monitor that kind of thing? So monitoring of partial discharge. So these are some of these different things that we do in our group. We develop our systems. So as I said in the first part, so we do a lot of activities on the entrepreneurial front. We have systems which are being commercialized in each of these fronts. So if you are interested, you can have a look at the website of our company, www.sensordropsnetworks.com, and that will also give you a fair bit of idea about what we do in the commercial front. With this, I will stop over here, and I will let you ask questions that you may have. Question?
Sir, in the security issues of the device constrained IoT devices, where have we come up still now to this age?
So I think the question that you are asking is, what is the current state of the art in terms of research in security of IoT, security in IoT, right? Is that what you are asking? So security in IoT, basically I will tell you that lot of work is being carried on, right? So everybody, what they are trying to do is that if you have a constrained environment, like how you can come up with a lightweight solution that can be used for light platforms, right? So you will find works like we have done a lot of work on jamming, right? So jamming is not a problem that is specific to IoT, but we have worked on jamming and countering jamming style attacks in IoT. A lot of work on the adoption of PKI for IoT networks, because PKI is a resource intensive solution. So PKI, publicly infrastructure. Then you will find like the regular algorithms like RSA and DES and so on. You will find papers which are talking about the lightweight solutions for RSA and etc., which can be used over here. Like that, so you will find like lot of research being undertaken on security in IoT networks at present. From the students, most obedient students, they're very silent. Is it possible to have sensors that are? Yes. So let me give you some insight. So when you were talking about the sensor node, as I said, that one of its components is the sensor. The sensor, basically, manufacturing of a sensor, not even manufacturing, the design of a sensor itself is a huge problem, right? So it's not something that the sensor network community deals with. Typically, there are people who coming from specialized backgrounds like microelectronics, etc. Their focus area is on developing sensors, right? So what they do is they try to identify materials that will be affected by that particular thing that has to be sensed, right? So for example, I along with some of my colleagues in the material science department at IIT Kharagpur, we are working on the air quality monitoring sensors, right? So they are developing sensors which will be able to detect the presence of NOx and SOx gases, right? NOx, NO2, NO3, SO2, SO3 kind of gases. These are harmful gases in the environment. So they are coming up with different sensors. They already have solutions, right? So which deal with that. So some of my other colleagues in the physics department, what they are doing is they are trying to come up with some sensing materials that will be able to detect, that will be able to, that will be affected by through which, using which you will be able to detect the presence of these volatile carbon compounds, right? So which are like TNT, etc., etc., right? So TNT and many of these carbon compounds are available in those explosives, right? So they are trying to come up with solutions, which sensors, which will be able to detect the presence of, within certain proximity, the presence of these carbon compounds. Okay. So that's a completely different domain altogether to come up with sensors. Designing of sensors takes 5-10 years. One sensor, 5 to 10 years, and then whatever you see in the market, that is a result of 15 years of research, right?
Are they reliable enough? All these sensors which are available with the devices, are they reliable, or is there any errors which we cannot fully depend on?
So I didn't talk about, in my NPTEL lecture you will find a lecture on sensing. In that you will be able to see that for the sensors, there are certain criteria by which you can basically you can measure the quality of a particular sensor. One of which is the accuracy. Second one is precision. Third is like that. There are different criteria that are there. So most of the sensors that are commercially available, the cheap ones, mostly I will tell you that these are China made and pervasively available in India. They are very low cost, good enough for getting started in IoT projects, but may not be perfect in terms of commercial use, right? But at the same time it's good, right? Because these are cheap, you cannot afford to spend too much of money, and you can start proving your concepts, building prototypes around it and so on. But whether a particular sensor is good or bad, etc., you need to calibrate, you need to see, you need to compare with the other similar. So let us say a temperature sensor. You need to use a regular thermometer, atmospheric thermometer measurement device, and see whether that small device that you have for use in IoT, whether how it compares in terms of measurement of the data, right? So, and that one is China made. It is like a maximum 100 rupees, not even that. And if you are talking about a regular temperature sensor, then it will be few hundred rupees. So cost is less, size is less. It can be integrated in IoT systems like that, right? So, it's it depends on what you want to do, right? So which type of sensor you are going to use, but accuracy, precision, and there are a few other parameters which are very important for characterizing sensors.
Are they recyclable?
Are they?
Degradable?
Biodegradable, recyclable. Very interesting thing. Actually, mostly the ones that are available are not, right? So they are not. But also, let me tell you that in IIT Kharagpur, we have the School of Medical Science and Technology, where some of the faculty members, they focus on building sensors for use within the body. For use within the body. And some of these sensors are basically, these are biomaterials, right? So these biomaterials are degradable, but as such, generally what is publicly available, these are not biodegradable as such, right? Okay?
System embedded things are possible to hack.
Sorry?
System embedded things are possible to hack.
Oh, yes. If you are, into ethical hacking, etc., unethical is different, but ethical hacking, this is actually, I will get you a lot of amateur hackers. They work on the IoT devices at present, right? So, they have shifted their interest from regular internet to IoT for medical hacking.
Hacking EVM things like this possible.
You try and let us know. Okay. So I think with this we'll stop here, and it was a long day. So with this I would thank you for remaining patient and listening to me, and thank you for interacting. Thank you.